Before Ray Charles left this world, he did something no one expected. He wrote down 10 names, not friends, not idols, but the musicians he could never forgive. He didn't hate the man. He hated the mirror the man held up to his world. Before Ray Charles closed his eyes for the last time, he didn't leave behind a grand farewell tour or a final, sentimental ballad. He left behind something far heavier. A list. Not a list of friends, protégés, or dream collaborators, but names that had haunted him for decades. Names that made him grit his teeth when their songs played on the radio. Names that reminded him not of admiration, but of betrayal. The betrayal of truth in music. Ray once said, "I don't hate people. I hate what happens to music when it loses its soul." But those words carried more weight than anyone ever realized, because in the final years of his life, when age and illness stripped away everything except his honesty, Ray Charles decided to say aloud what he had swallowed for half a century. And what he said would make the world rethink the very foundation of American music. This wasn't a rant, it was a reckoning. Number 1. Elvis Presley, The Crown of Another Man's Kingdom. In the fall of 2002, during one of his final recorded interviews, Ray was asked a question that made the room go silent. "What do you think of Elvis Presley?" There was no chuckle, no polite dodge, only a pause that felt like an earthquake waiting to break. Then he said quietly, "Don't ask me no more questions about Elvis. All he did was take our music and make money from it." To the world, Elvis was the king. To Ray, he was the first white man to walk through a door black artists had built, with blood and rejection. Ray didn't despise Elvis the man. He despised the world that crowned him for singing the pain that wasn't his to begin with. He had sung gospel in churches that wouldn't let him use the front door. He had played R&B in bars where white audiences danced but refused to share a table with him. Then one day, a clean-cut boy from Mississippi sang those same songs, and America called it a revolution. Ray once told a friend, "He didn't steal anything, but people stole from us and gave it to him." In that single sentence lay the truth that still echoes through history. Elvis didn't invent rock and roll. He benefited from the theft of it. To Ray, that wasn't just unfair, it was unforgivable. Number 2. Pat Boone, the white voice of black music.
It was great publicity. You'd have thought there was a feud between us, but there wasn't. We liked each other.
If Elvis was a symbol of the system, Pat Boone was its perfect reflection, smooth, polite, and utterly empty. Ray once said Boone sang like a man reading someone else's diary, because in a way, he was. In the 1950s, Ray was still grinding in smoky southern bars, while Pat Boone was performing cleaned-up versions of songs born in black neighborhoods. Tutti Frutti, Ain't That a Shame? Songs that had come from hunger, from laughter, from the rhythm of survival, stripped clean until they could be played safely in white living rooms. Boone didn't write those songs, didn't live those stories, didn't feel the weight of those nights, but he sold millions. Ray didn't see that as imitation. He saw it as cultural laundering. He once refused to shake Boone's hand at an awards show. When asked why, Ray said, "I don't know him. I just know his voice used to play instead of my friends." Pat Boone didn't steal melodies. He stole the spotlight and left the creators standing in the dark. Number 3. Michael Bolton, The Man Who Borrowed Pain. In the early 1990s, the world called Michael Bolton the voice of soul for a new generation. Ray Charles called him something else. The boy singing in my skin. When Bolton sang Georgia on My Mind, the song most sacred to Ray, he didn't hear flattery. he heard erasure. Ray once wrote in his notebook after seeing Bolton perform, "How do you inherit a life you never lived?" He wasn't angry at Bolton's success. He was wounded by the applause that followed it. When Ray had sung with that kind of emotion, critics called him too black. When Bolton did it, they called it pure soul. That double standard cut deeper than any insult. Ray never hated Michael Bolton the man. He hated what Bolton's praise revealed, that America still loved black sound, but not black struggle. Number 4. Kenny G. The Quiet Betrayal of Jazz. One night in New York in 1999, surrounded by jazz legends, Ray leaned on his cane and said, "If Charlie Parker came back to life and heard the radio today, he'd throw his horn in the river." Everyone laughed, but Ray didn't. To him, Kenny G wasn't evil. He was dangerous in a softer way, because Kenny's music made people think jazz was supposed to be easy, smooth, clean, background music for dinner parties. Ray saw that as the slow death of everything jazz stood for. He once said, "He doesn't break any rules. He just makes everything easier." And that was the problem. Real jazz, the kind that came from smoke, sorrow, and survival, was never supposed to be easy. It was supposed to challenge, to hurt, to live. When asked if he listened to Kenny G, Ray smiled faintly and said, "I put it on when I want to forget who I am." That line said everything. As Ray aged, his anger softened, but never disappeared. What remained was a quiet ache. Watching a new generation copy the surface of soul without touching its heart. Number 5. Tina Marie, The Imitation of Pain. Ray didn't hate Tina Marie. He respected her, admired her effort, and even praised her talent. But when asked what he truly thought of her, he said, "She's got the pitch, but not the scars." To him, soul wasn't about range or rhythm. It was about survival. Tina Marie had been called the White Queen of Soul, celebrated by black audiences and embraced by Motown. But Ray believed there was something she could never fully grasp. The weight that makes a note tremble, the memory that hides behind each breath. "She sings like she's been trained," he once said, "but soul doesn't come from practice. It comes from pain." Ray didn't see Tina as an intruder. He saw her as a mirror reflecting the image of soul without ever touching its wounds. Number 6. George Harrison, The Love Song That Froze. Ray never forgot the day he covered George Harrison's love ballad and poured his heart into it. The critics loved it. Even Frank Sinatra called it one of the greatest covers ever. But when Harrison was asked about it, his answer was cold. "I liked the bridge. The rest didn't feel right. Not enough nuance." Ray never sang that song again. That single comment, polite, detached, cut him deeper than open hatred ever could. Because for Ray, music wasn't craft. It was confession. And when someone he respected treated it like a technical exercise, he felt unseen all over again. He once told a friend, "I've played with people who couldn't hear a thing, but George, he heard everything, and still didn't feel a thing." Ray didn't hate Harrison. He just couldn't forgive that kind of indifference, the quiet dismissal that tells an artist their pain is just a sound wave. Number 7. Justin Timberlake, The Plastic Idol. When Ray first heard "Cry Me a River," Justin Timberlake's breakout single, he listened quietly, nodded to the beat, then turned the radio off. "It's not bad," he said, "but it's not alive either." To him, Timberlake represented something much bigger. The commercialization of emotion. A generation of singers trained to sound perfect, look perfect, and feel nothing. Ray once said, "Music isn't something you do for showbiz. It's something you play when the world ain't listening." Justin wasn't wrong. He just wasn't real. Ray saw him as the product of marketing, not of hunger, a mannequin built to sing pain he never lived. He wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of watching the world praise the image of soul while forgetting its roots. Number 8. Christina Aguilera, the voice that tried too hard. When Ray first saw a young Christina Aguilera on television, she was belting a note so high it could have shattered glass. The audience roared. Ray just sighed. Later, when she asked him what he thought of her voice, he smiled and said, "You've got pipes, girl." But what are you trying to say with them? That wasn't sarcasm. It was sadness. To Ray, true pain didn't need to scream. It needed to breathe. He once told a friend, "She sings like she's in court, trying to convince the jury she's been through hell." Christina's voice had power, but not patience. It had volume, but not vulnerability. Ray believed that until a singer learns to whisper their pain, they don't yet own it. He didn't see arrogance in her. He saw fear, fear of being anything less than perfect. And to Ray, perfection was the enemy of truth. Number 9. Barry Manilow, the music wrapped in plastic.
But I sent you away.
Ray used to describe Barry Manilow's songs as music that smells like a dentist's waiting room. Clean, polished, flawless, and lifeless. He once said, "He sounds like someone wrapped in plastic wrap. You touch it, it glides, but you can't feel a damn thing." Ray didn't demand that music be messy. He demanded that it be human. Barry's songs, to him, were showroom pieces, crafted, not born. "Some folks sell albums," Ray wrote in his final notebook. "Some sell truth. Some just sell polish." He never played another Manilow record after that. The last name on Ray's list wasn't a musician, it was a man of God. And for Ray Charles, that made it hurt the most. Number 10. Billy Graham, the preacher who questioned his soul.
Said, "Sir, what must I do to find eternal life?" And
In 1965, Reverend Billy Graham gave a sermon condemning the rise of rhythm and blues, warning that sacred music belongs to God, not the devil's playground. He didn't say Ray's name, but everyone knew who he meant. Ray didn't respond publicly, but friends recalled him sitting at his piano for an hour, hands on the keys, never playing a note. For Ray, that was more than criticism. It was exile. He had always believed that gospel was prayer in any form, that you could find God in a nightclub as much as in a church. He once told Quincy Jones, "If that man ever had to beg for supper with a piano, he'd know music ain't about genre. It's about hunger." Ray didn't hate Billy Graham. He hated the wall that sermon built, the wall between holiness and humanity, between pain and praise. Ray Charles didn't leave behind a legacy of hate. He left behind a warning. Every name he spoke, every silence he kept, was a lesson about the cost of authenticity. He didn't hate people. He hated what happened to music when it became safe, polished, imitated, or profitable. He fought for the kind of sound that couldn't be bought, the kind that came from broken bones, from hunger, from faith tested in the dark. In his final writings, he left one last line, a whisper more than a quote. "Maybe I never hated anyone. Maybe I just couldn't forgive forgetting." Because to Ray Charles, music wasn't just sound, it was truth. And truth, real truth, never dies easy.